Chapter 21. The Road Ahead. After Tony finished asking, he worried Lion might be put off, so he immediately tried to joke things into lighter territory. What, like actually becoming Superman and saving the world, hauling every nuclear bomb out into space and dropping them into the sun? Or finding a whole harem of girlfriends to pass on those super genes? Come on, tell me. Don't look so pensive. You must have plans. Satisfy my curiosity, big brother. Tony was deliberately coaxing. If I had that power, I'd date 10 cover models in one night, then fly off the planet to tour the solar system for aliens, hopefully some alien beauties. Lion couldn't help laughing. It was the sort of thing Tony would say. There probably aren't any beauties out there, just xenomorph facehuggers waiting for you. He played along. I'm a little different from you. I don't have that many plans. I'll live the way I always have. Before, I was the second young master of the Stark family, and everywhere I went, people smiled at me. The whole world treated me well. Now I'm stronger, but that won't change any of that. I have no reason to do anything bad. Don't you agree? That's very well said, kid. Tony nodded, relief written across his face like a proud parent. Lion took a deep breath. Tony, if you look at me like that one more time, I'll use the slippers Pepper just bought to spank you good. I'm your younger brother. Stop trying to parent me, okay? This time, Tony wouldn't relent. Lion, you're always so sensitive. Here, a toast might make you feel like a proper lord. With the way you talk, if someone like me isn't a lord, then who is? Lion clinked his glass with Tony's, but didn't fall into the trap. I haven't finished. Although I don't plan to change my day-to-day life, I'm going to start walking another path. What path? Tony sat up, splashing water. The path of chasing power. Lion drained the red wine in his glass. That's it. You're already strong enough. Tony was genuinely stunned. There's no kryptonite in this world, and no one you can't beat. Why would you need more strength? Lion smiled. Not now, but there will be in the future. So how do you plan to get stronger? Keep sunbathing? Tony teased. Lion shook his head. Of course I'll keep sunbathing, but there's a limit to how far sunbathing alone can take me. I plan to improve myself in multiple ways. Learn magic, learn qigong, study science. And when I know enough, maybe I can push my body's upper limits by studying genes. Moonlight shimmered on the pool as Lion curled his fist beneath the water. Studying genes? Like Captain America's super soldier serum? Tony had a bad feeling. That stuff might not work for you, right? It wouldn't, Lion said, but I don't mean someone else's serum. I mean my own genes. He looked at Tony. Kryptonian genes. Tony stared, his expression shifting. Are you sure about this? The people who toyed with Kryptonian genes in the comics created Doomsday. Tony had obviously been reading DC. He even knew Doomsday. That's a Kryptonian biological weapon. It only knows slaughter. It would only bring destruction. Even Krypton couldn't control that power. His tone turned serious. This isn't an easy path or a safe highway. If Kryptonian genetics were easy, with all the super brains out there, someone would have already made every Kryptonian a god. Lion, maybe you should rethink this. You don't have to study genes. There are many ways to grow stronger. I'll find alternatives with you. Lion shook his head. I'll try other methods, but I won't give up on studying genes to fundamentally raise my limits. Tony groaned and dunked his face in the pool, splashing water through his hair. He felt like a parent facing a rebellious teen, ready to persuade but not sure where to start. Okay, Lion, think about what happens if your research goes wrong and you become Doomsday. Tony pressed the point. As I said, no one on Earth can stop you. If you go rogue, what then? Is destruction the only outcome? You're being a bit extreme, Lion said. Those words made Lion stare at Tony, lost in thought. In his world, Tony had been the go-getter, the one who never backed down once he'd decided something. Ultron, the Civil War. Tony's aggressiveness had started a lot of big things. The idea that Tony now called him extreme made Lion ask himself whether his pursuit of power had been reckless. All right, I admit it. Directly studying Kryptonian genes is a bit extreme. Tony exhaled in relief. Then Lion changed the subject. Still, once I get some Kryptonite, I'll begin the research. Tony's eyes nearly popped out. Wait, Kryptonite? We have Kryptonite here? Are you kidding? Our world doesn't, Lion said oddly. I mean getting Kryptonite from the DC universe. Now Tony was bewildered. To the DC universe? Are we talking fantasy now? I'm serious. Lion held up his empty wine glass. I have a feeling my time-space travel ability can reach the DC universe. If I get Kryptonite, I'll hand it to you, and if I really become Doomsday, you take care of me. Tony ignored the latter half of that sentence and focused on the first. Let's not even get to Kryptonite. Time-space travel? You can do that too? Is the DC universe actually real? Theoretically, it's possible. Lion felt a wave of exasperation. I told you on my birthday that I'd awakened a Kryptonian bloodline in time-space travel. You didn't believe me then, did you? In truth, Tony had never really believed Lion's claim about a Kryptonian lineage. He'd assumed Lion's strength came from a genetic mutation that let him charge from the sun. It was only after Lion returned from another universe with more and more Superman-like abilities that Tony began to accept it. But Lion's other power, his travel ability, had long since slipped Tony's mind. Chapter 22, 3 Things. Ah, I remember now. Tony feigned sudden realization. So you can travel between worlds? That's right. Leon ignored the old man's pretense. Tony had simply forgotten. My goodness, you're a genius. Your theory of parallel worlds has just been proven by you. Tony, startled at first, then genuinely excited. If you can go between worlds, you absolutely have to take me along. And if you go looking for Kryptonite, I'm coming too. Knowing he couldn't talk Leon out of it, Tony decided to join him outright. At least if Kryptonite turns you into a regular guy, I can kick you a couple of times. Leon was used to this awkward show of concern. After a beat, he didn't refuse directly. We'll see. All right, let's put the power chasing aside for now. Seeing Tony about to say more, Leon changed the subject. Let's go back inside. There are things I've wanted to do for a long time that we need to talk about. Half an hour later, Leon and Tony sat around the workbench in the lab. Tony, still in a bathrobe, listened as Leon spoke, his expression growing more serious. There are 3 things I want to do now that I'm back. Leon held up 3 fingers, as if listing tasks rather than asking for help killing 3 people. First, deal with Obadiah. That one's done, Tony said. I kept saying he was trouble, and this time it turned out to be true. Second, deal with the 10 rings. They kidnapped you, so I'll help you take them out. I'll start tomorrow. Third, find out the truth behind our parents' death. The first 2 were acceptable, but at the third, Tony couldn't sit still. The truth? What truth? They didn't die in a car accident? Leon couldn't say outright that he already suspected the killer was the Winter Soldier, that it was Bucky. There was no hard proof, and his target wasn't just Bucky. He wanted the entire Hydra apparatus exposed. I've always had doubts. Leon clasped his hands and rested his chin on them, looking thoughtful. If it really was a car accident, why did I, the most fragile of the lot, not die while they did? Leon, that's because the car caught fire and they couldn't get out. You were thrown clear, and a blanket was wrapped twice around your neck. Tony's thoughts were unusually clear for a moment. Still, a small part of him wanted to believe Leon outright. Maybe he had been waiting for someone to say what he'd secretly hoped all these years, that his parents' deaths weren't an accident. That would give him a legitimate reason to hunt down their killer, a channel for the anger he'd kept under his playboy facade. But he also knew any investigation had to be thorough and not drag innocent people into the mess. The cave in Afghanistan had taught him not just about the armor, but about respect for life. There's another possibility, Leon said, staring into Tony's eyes. That infant was supposed to die. The cloth around his neck should have finished him. But the person who staged the accident and left didn't know that the infant carried a Kryptonian bloodline. When Leon was young, he'd wondered why he survived. A controlled killing machine like the Winter Soldier wouldn't show mercy unless it made a mistake. How could such a machine make a mistake? Only after his Kryptonian heritage awakened did Leon realize it wasn't the Winter Soldier's error that saved him. It was the tenacious vitality of the blood inside him. It hadn't been awakened then, but it made him hardier, allowed him to survive. Leon's words hit Tony like lightning. You mean? His mind raced. Leon didn't flinch at Tony's loss of composure and went on. When I was little, I thought the theory was baseless too. All official investigations said it was an accident. Why make wild guesses? But after my abilities awakened, I knew the guess might be right. It was something I subconsciously believed. Those accident memories, even if my baby brain couldn't form proper memories, left traces in my subconscious. That was true. After awakening his superbrain, Leon had vague impressions of things from before he was one, but nothing clear. Human memory is odd. The superbrain needs mature neurons to encode scenes. Before he was a year old, those systems weren't developed, so he couldn't have full memories. Awakening the superbrain let him glimpse fragments, images, and feelings, but not complete memories. Of course, in a world with strange powers, maybe someday he could retrieve everything. For now, Leon's tone hardened. In the days since I returned, I kept digging. I found the truth, Tony. You're serious? Tony shot to his feet, pupils wide with shock and anger. Leon's voice stayed calm. My superbrain found them. The killer is one of theirs. Theirs who? Tony already believed him. His words went cold as steel. Hydra, Leon said finally. Impossible. Hydra is dead. History's closed on them, Tony protested. He wanted to believe Leon, but it was hard. They're dead. To the public. But cutting off one head only made two grow back. They've been resurrected. I've gone through a lot of classified files from secret departments these past few days. Leon laid it out. Behind the major international organizations, there's a secret body reporting to the International Security Council. They call themselves the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division, SHIELD, headquartered in New York. The predecessor to SHIELD was the Strategic Scientific Reserve. Your father helped found it. In Operation Paperclip after World War II, they recruited German talents who'd been associated with Hydra. And those recruits never lost their loyalty to Hydra. Tony already guessed the rest. So they infiltrated SHIELD and resurrected Hydra from inside? Leon nodded. That's the truth. Hydra wanted to kill our father because he was a leader in SHIELD and blocked their path. Tony sat back down slowly, lips pressed tight. How many Hydra agents are inside SHIELD? Does the director know? Leon's next sentence made Tony spring to his feet again. SHIELD's tens of thousands of people, and a large number are Hydra operatives. The previous director was Hydra. The current director isn't openly Hydra, but in practice, he's even more aligned with them than the old guard. What? Tony shouted. So SHIELD is basically under Hydra's control. Chapter 23, A Punch. That's not entirely accurate, Leon said, tapping his ear. From what I've learned these last few days, the top people at SHIELD are mostly intact. The Hydra agents are just the core members and a few elites. Just core members and elites? Tony ran a hand through his hair, speechless. How is that any different from everyone? The organization my father built was handed over to the enemy by those idiots. He paced in front of the workbench. No, Leon, it's our responsibility to clean up what the old man left behind. We need to destroy this organization. I agree, Leon said without hesitation. I can't stand an organization that's weak but constantly fantasizes about saving the world. Besides, this fits my revenge plan. Leon waved at the holographic projector, and a picture of Director Fury flickered into view. Director Fury wants total control. He wants to take every security issue onto SHIELD's shoulders. He sounds a lot like Hydra. Why isn't he Hydra? Tony asked. Leon shrugged. Maybe his predecessor feared he'd threaten the organization if he joined them. He flicked his wrist, and a file package opened on the screen. This is the list of Hydra agents I compiled inside SHIELD. I've got their identities and all the evidence. Later, Tony, you leak this to Director Fury and let it ferment into internal chaos, Leon continued. Don't have Jarvis send it. They'll trace it. Then, once they're in enough disarray, we release everything to the public and expose Hydra completely. At that point, the whole world will turn against Hydra. Then we can use the chaos to find the truth about our parents' deaths, evidence, culprits, everything. Leon's smile turned sharp. And while we do it, I'll show the world what I can do. How? Tony blinked. Big gestures. Leon's voice was cool. Force them to use large-scale weapons, intercontinental missiles, hydrogen warheads, anything they think will work. I'll take a missile head-on and then punch one of their military bases into rubble. He poured himself a glass of water. It proves both my defense and my offense, and it sends a clear message. I strike without mercy. I suppose after that, even if I stroll around in a Superman suit, nobody will dare mess with me, Leon added. Tony pictured Leon dodging missiles and couldn't stop himself. Isn't that a little extreme? Risky? I'm not rushing into dying, Leon said. I'll only do it when I'm sure. If I can't take a missile, I can dodge it. He reached behind him and pulled out a box. I need to get stronger. I'm not planning on dying. Tony, look at this suit I made. He opened the box. Inside was a Superman-style suit in gold, blue, and red, but without the old-fashioned briefs on the outside. All dark blue with a gold inverted pentagon framing an S on the chest and a red cape attached at the shoulders. Kevlar woven, bulletproof, flexible, and most importantly, very cool. Despite himself, Tony grinned. It does look good. I'm relieved you left the underwear in the closet. And that S, that's for hope, right? No, Leon said, flicking the S. Now it stands for Stark, the first letter. Starting tomorrow, I'll wear this and go to Afghanistan to take out the 10 rings, he declared. From now on, I'll be Superman. You didn't forget me, did you? I'm coming too. Tony stepped forward, serious. This is my mess as much as yours. I'm going to be a part of it. You still have to carry out the plan we talked about. Leon tapped the projection. You'll be eager to find out the truth. Tony shook his head. That doesn't stop me from flying halfway across the world to bash some thugs while I investigate. He'd been tracking the 10 rings for days. Their reach ran from Afghanistan into the Middle East, oppressing ordinary people with extortion and violence. Even if Leon hadn't mentioned it, Tony would have wanted to dismantle them. Okay, but be careful with the S-shield angle. In the early stages, don't let them trace anything back to us. That would be a nightmare. As you say, Tony looked at Fury's face on the holo. Why don't you just find Hydra's bases and hit them directly? Leon shook his head. Hydra's senior members have official positions all over the world. Those bases are tied to governments and powerful people. If I strike openly, the narrative can be twisted. I'll be painted as a dictator or warmonger. I wouldn't care, he added lightly. But if trouble can be avoided by thinking ahead, why let it pile up? Tony nodded. I knew you hate being passive. Leon ignored the jab. That's why I want to make a show of strength. My identity will be exposed sooner or later. When I'm found out, everyone will test me. If they test me aggressively, can I just let them? If I attack them, whether they're protecting their reputation or avenging their own people, they'll retaliate. It could spiral into me having to neutralize most of the world's armed forces before I can live a normal life again. So I might as well plan it, manufacture a world enemy, and then demonstrate the kind of force that scares the whole planet. Tony couldn't help but applaud. Smart. You made the right choice. Thanks. I just don't like being disturbed in my daily life. Leon slid the suit back into the box. This is the plan. I've laid out everything. You can rest easier now, right? Tony smiled. I wasn't worried. One more thing. Why the Superman look? Wearing pajamas out in public. Are you trying to be a superhero? I like Superman, Leon said, lifting the box, but I'm not becoming some saintly hero. I might help when I see injustice, he added, but being the guy who saves the world? No thanks. Tony shook his head. What a pity. I already thought of a name for our team, the Super Iron Brothers. Sounds great, right? Leon's voice faded down the hallway. Sounds like two kindergarten kids. It's childish. A new day had dawned where Leon started, but by the time he reached Afghanistan, it was already night. He had flown here once before, so he knew the route well. In minutes, he overtook more than a dozen commercial airliners and hung in the sky, looking down through the cloud cover at the dark, starlit terrain below. His eyes swept the ground with a precision that felt sharper than radar. Most of the 10 Rings gang's bases were enforcing curfews and people were trying to sleep, but there were always a few deranged terrorists who preyed on civilians after dark. Those were Leon's first targets. He spotted 2 armed men kicking in a civilian's door. Slanting his body, he dove. Wrapped in his biofield, he fell like a silent god of death. When he hit the ground, he released the field. The earth cracked around his boots in a spiderweb pattern, the dull thud echoing through the yard. The noise startled the 2 attackers. They spun toward him, guns raised, and cursed. Leon shrugged. He spoke a crude Dari line he'd picked up recently, enough to catch the tone, and then when they made no attempt to cooperate and tried to put barrels to his forehead, he said, "It seems you don't want to talk." He reached out like a shadow, gripped their necks, lifted and twisted. 2 sick snaps later, the men's heads slumped and they were dead. He dropped the bodies without a second thought. As he turned to leave, he remembered the family frozen inside the house and looked back. A Pashtun family huddled together, an elderly father with a sun-leathered face and a long beard, a mother and 2 daughters in traditional robes, trembling and clutching one another, afraid to make a sound. Leon spoke to them in Pashto, calming as he could. "You don't need to fear these men anymore. It's late. Go back to bed. By morning, the terrorists near here will be gone." A soft voice called from the doorway. The youngest girl, 7 or 8, had been hiding under her mother's hand, but wrenched it away to look at him with wide, hopeful eyes. "Are you Superman?" she asked. Leon had a self-made uniform and a red cape, and he could fly. He must have looked like a superhero to her. He blinked, amused and a little surprised that Hollywood's icons had reached even here. He smiled. "I'm not, but it's fine if you call me that." The child brightened. "So you've come to help us? Like on TV, when you fly away the bad guys?" He crouched to her level, laughing softly as she ran to hug his leg. "What's your name?" "Shafika. Shafika Mazari." "All right, Shafika. Go back to your room now, lie on your bed, and have a wonderful dream. When you wake up tomorrow morning, the bad men will be gone, okay?" She hesitated. "Are you leaving, Superman?" He tapped her forehead with his finger. "Next time, don't talk to strangers and listen to your mother." Then he stood, took a step, and shot up into the clouds. The family spilled into the yard to watch him go, awe and prayer on their faces. The old man made a quick sign of thanks. For the first time in a long while, hope felt possible. Leon blinked through hot spots and alleys, clearing out terrorists who preyed on civilians. He arrived, threw a punch, and left. Each encounter was over in an instant. In total, it took him under 10 minutes. When he dealt with the small fry, he moved on to the bases. He wasn't interested in the usual strategy of picking off small posts first. He was going straight to the heart. The largest 10 Rings gang base sat below him as he descended through churning air, cape snapping in a hard wind. From his vantage, he counted around 70 men on patrol. With his X-ray sight, he could see the rest. More than 4,000 combatants asleep in their bunks across the camp. In a tent nearby, stowed under tarpaulin, was a Jericho missile, one of Tony Stark's recent designs. One warhead from that, and you could level a ridge. "How did a Jericho get here?" Leon muttered. "Tony, you really outdid yourself. Aiding evil, huh?" He took out his phone and called the onboard assistant. "Jarvis, record everything I see and send it to Tony afterwards, especially any Stark tech. I want him to see it." "Camera systems online, Master Leon," Jarvis replied calmly from the speaker. "Recording now." Leon nodded once and dropped. He made no attempt to hide this time. He fell into the camp like a meteor, air burning and trailing a brief, fiery streak. The impact shook the ground. Alarms screamed as men scrambled. Leon planted himself in the center of the camp and began to work. For every face that rose, his heat vision found it. In moments, a swath of the assembled soldiers were dead before most of them even understood what had happened. Those who woke and tried to flee screamed "monster" and were cut down in the chaos. In some cases, the panic caused men to shoot into their own ranks. The remainder cowered behind tents and sandbags, bringing out grenades, grenade launchers, rocket-propelled grenades, armored vehicle missiles, and the Jericho missile, ready to fire. They planned to pour everything at once into a volley that would obliterate the attacker's body and erase any trace. The camp churned with terror and desperate preparation as Leon stood among them, the calm eye in a furious storm. Leon watched every movement of the terrorists with perfect clarity. Instead of immediately countering, he waited. Grenades and rockets began to rain down, but Leon barely moved. Only once, he swept a heat ray across the area and ended a volley. It wasn't until the vehicle-mounted missiles started to ignite that he finally rose into the air. "Jarvis, are there any satellites above us right now?" he asked. "A U.S. military satellite is operating over Afghanistan." "Young Master Leon," Jarvis replied and began to analyze the feed. "It will monitor any medium to large-scale conflict automatically. There's also a local reporter filming, about 700 meters away." Leon nodded and pushed out the golden S on his chest. "Looks like an audience is ready. How could Superman's first battle go unnoticed?" His gaze found the reporter immediately. The terrorist's base sat among low hills, easy to defend, hard to attack. The man lay in the brush on one hillside, bundled in local dress. His beard was half black, half white. He was a middle-aged local correspondent who had seen Afghanistan's peace and its worst disasters. People like him hated the Ten Rings and feared nothing when it came to exposing their brutality. "Is that really Superman?" the reporter whispered. In the distance, a dark silhouette hovered, cape red and bright, posture straight and unmistakably like the Superman from the films. It seemed impossible, yet the footage on his camera showed a single figure facing 1,000 soldiers. He laughed at his own absurdity and swore to himself, half joking, that if Superman could save the country, he'd give the rest of his life savings to support DC Comics and Warner Bros. Then a blaze lit the camp, and a scorching column of fire shot up. 6 2 to 3 meter vehicle rockets arced into the sky. "That's a rocket! This is bad," the reporter shouted. "Superman, get out of the way!" Instead of dodging, Leon flew toward them. He accelerated, phone in one hand, fist in the other, and collided with the incoming rockets like an arrow hitting its target. One detonated on contact, the others exploded in quick sequence. The hills rattled with thunderous blasts, smoke filled the air, and fire painted the trees orange. Shockwaves bent the surrounding trunks and tore at the reporter's turban, revealing his wind-blown, yellowed hair. He blinked at the rising smoke, blue eyes watering, heart pounding. Under the impact of 6 missiles, no one should have survived, yet the dark silhouette remained. A gale whipped the smoke aside, and Superman stood unscathed, his cape fluttering, not even a trace of soot on his suit. The reporter leaped to his feet, face flushed with wonder, punching the air and letting the world see him. He felt, for the first time in a long while, a glimmer of hope. The terrorists reacted too, though theirs was terror and rage. Some screamed, "Monster!" Others panicked. A burst of gunfire ripped through the camp as deserters or those refusing to be cannon fodder were cut down. Leon hovered there, amused. "Oh, they finally brought out the Jericho missile. Planning to die together, are they?" Jarvis's voice explained. The Jericho is a wide-area saturation weapon. Its blast incinerates within a 2-kilometer radius. Launching it so close meant the terrorists intended to take Leon with them. Leon couldn't help a wry thought. He'd been curious to see Tony's latest work in action. Now he'd get his chance. "Jarvis, record this and send it to Tony. Ask him how he can sleep at night." "I've been recording, young Master Leon," Jarvis said. On the open ground, they pushed 3 Jericho launchers into position and fired. The missiles streaked up and, at range, each disintegrated into dozens or hundreds of smaller submunitions, filling the sky and blocking every escape route. It was top-tier saturation bombing. Leon vanished into the missile ring. In a blink, he reappeared beside the reporter, yanked him out of the bushes, and in an instant carried him 3 kilometers away to another hilltop, gently setting him down. Then he was back at the center of the incoming cloud. "No need to worry, I'll be right back," he murmured, though he knew time was almost gone. The swarm closed. Leon's fists became a blur. Dozens of after-images, fist shadows, exploded out in all directions from him, like 100 hands striking at once. Every submunition detonated in midair. The resulting explosion dwarfed the earlier blasts, a roar that seemed to rip the sky, fire belching upward, smoke climbing toward the heavens. The shockwave shredded trees and mountains in its path. 3 kilometers away, the reporter saw nothing but a blur, and then was thrown to the ground by a pressure wave. He rolled, tumbled to his feet, clung to his rags, and stared at the mushroom cloud towering on the horizon. Even from that distance, the heat was almost palpable. "What kind of rocket is that? How can it be so terrifying?" He kept repeating, horror and awe tangled in his voice. He still remembered the missiles splitting into dozens of smaller warheads in the sky. Such a weapon was nearly unstoppable. If used against the local defense forces, the devastation would be unimaginable. And Superman, where did he go? "He saved me." Leaning weakly against a tree, he watched the mushroom cloud and wondered if the hero had gone back into the blast to save others. A gust of wind swept the smoke aside, and like before, the silhouette of Superman stood revealed, untouched by the inferno. "My God," the reporter whispered, trembling with reverence. "He's practically a god." Chapter 26. This is Superman. A shadow hovered in the night sky for a long moment. The fire that had raged across mountain and plain beneath had been snuffed out by him. The surviving embers were as scattered as stars. Still, following the rules of firefighting, Leon hovered low and checked carefully, stamping out each remaining spark one by one. Then he looked down at the 10 Rings base, now a smoldering ruin, and casually scanned the area. To the middle-aged reporter on the ground, those movements were the very image of Superman, deliberate, just, making sure no evildoer had escaped. The damned 10 Rings did all kinds of evil. Now it's over. Superman is here. We finally have hope. Superman is here, and we will have peace. The man felt the figure overhead was godlike. He trembled, eyes full of the relief of vengeance and the hope of salvation. He has come to help us. He has come to save us. He's a messenger sent by Allah. No, he's Allah on earth, the incarnation of God. He wept with joy, his legs weak, and dropped to his knees in the dirt, prostrating himself and sobbing. Everything's going to be all right. It's finally over. Superman above. Oh, Superman, I must tell him, the 10 Rings still has many bases here. He scrambled to his feet, rolling toward a tree to steady himself and ready to shout. But before he could call, the ocean blue suit and blood-red cape floated down and stopped right in front of him. Superman, the reporter blurted, startled. Superman had appeared without him noticing. Thank you for your praise, but I'm not God, Leon said, smiling. I'm just someone who helps when I see injustice. What's your name? He added. You risked filming near a terrorist organization. You were very brave. You're a hero. No, I'm just an ordinary man. You are our hero. The reporter's face flushed with excitement. I'm Hafizullah Abdullah. Thank you for saving me. Up close at last, he could see every detail. Deep black eyes like a beautiful night, a perfectly carved face. This man was immaculate. Abdullah was certain even girls would dream of him. In fact, anyone would. Don't be nervous, Abdullah, Leon said. He felt an odd, intense stare from the reporter that made his spine prickle, so he moved on quickly. I came hoping you could do me a favor. You filmed what I did in the 10 Rings camp, right? He asked. Yes. Abdullah fumbled and thrust his camera forward with both hands. Please forgive the unauthorized filming. Take the footage. That's not what I mean. Leon pushed the camera back. I want you to go public with these recordings. Publish them and take them to the media. Under my name? Yes. Tell them you risked your life to secretly film the 10 Rings. Tell every outlet, all foreign troops in this land must withdraw immediately, abandon their invasion. Abdullah stared. Are you declaring war on the U.S. side? Not a declaration of war, Leon said, then paused and chose his words, but a declaration of the post-war order. He turned, nodded once to the reporter, and pushed off into the night. Goodbye. I will remember you, brave man. Abdullah watched the figure vanish into the clouds, his hands instinctively folded as if in prayer. Superman above, a perfect savior. Then, oddly, as the sky swallowed the cape, he realized he couldn't quite remember the man's face. He blinked. Wait, did I forget what he looks like? Jarvis, send all the battle footage to Tony. From the clouds, Leon spoke into the comm, and if he's still asleep, send a wake-up service with it. Understood, young Master Leon. I will transmit the video data to Los Angeles now. Jarvis complied. I believe Mr. Stark will appreciate this gift. Leon set his next target and consulted Jarvis. What's the local time? 9:47 p.m. local time. Good. Let's work fast. Try to clear every 10 Rings base before 11, then we'll head to the Eagle base. Young Master Leon, are you planning to strike a U.S. base? Shall I notify Mr. Stark in advance? No need. As a taxpayer, I refuse to let those rednecks use my money to do harm everywhere. It's justified to put things right. He added with a small smile, and if I make a name for myself now, it will be easier later when I step forward to deal with Hydra. You are truly thoughtful, Jarvis replied. Across the ocean, at S-Shield headquarters, Coulson placed a tablet on his director's desk. Director, you need to see this. His normally easy expression was gone. He looked serious. The director, one-eyed, imposing, and composed even as he sat at his white lacquered desk, turned from the window and regarded the screen. Coulson, what is it? The largest 10 Rings base in Afghanistan has been destroyed, Director Fury. Who did it? Fury glanced down at the tablet. As the video played, his inscrutable expression crumpled into disbelief. On the screen, a cool, confident figure calmly burned through a rain of grenades with a heat beam. The footage cut to the same man standing unscathed while a Jericho missile detonated nearby, then quietly quelling the firestorm. Fury suddenly stood, eyes wide. "What the hell is this?" "There's more," Coulson said, fast-forwarding. The director watched, stunned, as the mysterious man moved with impossible power and precision. Fury's hand went almost instinctively to the pager he used to contact Captain Marvel, the only person with the reach and power to answer crises like this. But Coulson spoke before he could. "This is Superman, Director." Chapter 27. The Storm is Coming. Superman, who is that? Nick Fury's eyes narrowed, then shifted to bewilderment. Director, Superman is a superhero from DC Comics. He has super strength, super speed. Wait, you're telling me this is a character from a comic book? One of those costumed heroes who wear pajamas, show their face, and save the world? Fury sneered. To be precise, Superman doesn't hide his face, Director. He has a biofield that prevents people from remembering or photographing his appearance, Coulson recited, as if listing prized facts. Fury peered at the satellite image. "It's true there's no facial detail? You seem pretty familiar with him?" "I'm a fan of Superman, and of Captain America," Coulson admitted, a little boyishly pleased. "So what do you want us to do about this Superman?" Fury leaned back, steepling his hands. "It looks like he doesn't want his identity discovered. According to the comics, he stands for justice and won't tolerate unjust violence. Maybe we should try to make contact," Coulson suggested. "That's fiction, Coulson. In reality, this is an imitator, and whatever he's doing right now is violent," Fury snapped. "That does seem to be the case. The comic Superman doesn't kill. He follows a no-kill principle, unlike Captain America. Stop talking about your comics." Fury slammed the table. "Take Barton and go to Afghanistan. Investigate the other party." "Yes, Director." Coulson finished his report and left. As he reached the door, Fury called after him. "Also, send me a set of Superman comics." At the military command base, the mood was far less amused. Rhodes, now a colonel in the Weapons Research Department, was first to point out the obvious. The figure in the video was a living person, not a humanoid weapon. A major from the missile unit countered that if Jericho missiles couldn't stop him, only a nuclear option would work. A Navy captain said there was no dealing with someone who could fly like that. An Air Force lieutenant colonel warned that airborne missiles would struggle to track such a small, fast target. General Ross finally banged the table and made the call. "Ignore him for now, keep alert, and if he shows no hostility, try negotiation. Ideally, get him cooperating with research to create a U.S. super soldier." Meeting adjourned. Prepare for engagement. That morning, secret departments were in an uproar. Meanwhile, on the Los Angeles coast, the Stark mansion was warm and lazy until Jarvis woke Tony with a blaring Suona recording Leon had made. "God, Jarvis, what are you doing?" Tony shot upright from the floor, blanket clutched to his chest. The sudden blast had startled him off the bed. The lilting, urgent melody made him imagine horses thundering through his bedroom. "Sir, young Master Leon asked me to wake you and play this video," Jarvis said. Jarvis brought up a holographic projection. Leon's footage filled the room, thousands of guns firing in unison, hundreds of grenades detonating in layered bombardments, vehicle-mounted rockets and Jericho missiles streaking across the screen. Fire filled the frame, aftershocks of explosions leaving the field a charred hellscape. Tony watched, stunned, before the progress bar hit the end. "What is this? A promotional video Leon threw together overnight? Where is he now?" "Young Master Leon is currently engaging the 10 rings in Afghanistan, sir. He recorded this footage for you 10 minutes ago, as he requested." "He's in the Middle East? When did he leave?" "It's only—" Tony glanced at the sunlight outside. "Oh, it's 10 o'clock here." He rubbed his face. "He went off alone, so why film this for me?" "Young Master Leon wanted you to examine the Stark military hardware in the video, sir." "Stark military hardware." Tony's face went cold. He rewound the footage and watched it again, jaw tightening. "Most of those are Stark systems. Why is a Jericho missile at a 10 rings base?" Tony's expression hardened. His cheeks trembled with anger. "I only sold those missiles to the military. How did these guys get them? The military? Obadiah?" "Sir, only a single batch of Jericho missiles has been manufactured, the batch you sold," Jarvis reported. Tony stood in silence for a beat, then snapped his shirt on and strode to the door. Jarvis, power up Leon's armor and come with me to the Middle East, Afghanistan. Understood, sir. Also, do you think you'll be able to sleep tonight? Why do you ask? Tony frowned. Young Master Leon asked me to inquire and to report your response to him promptly. Tony opened his mouth, then closed it. He inhaled sharply and let it out through his nose. Tell him this, when I can't sleep, I'll make sure he can't sleep either. He spread his arms and the Mark III suit whirred into action. Follow me, Jarvis. The armor launched, followed by the smaller suit Jarvis was controlling, Super Mark I, the name Leon had insisted on. That kid's competitive streak even showed in what he named things. Los Angeles morning was Afghanistan night. The sky over that country was a smear of tracer fire. From above, the firefights looked like one candle flare after another, lighting, blazing, and dying. The flames moved across the map from northeast to southwest until nothing but smoke remained. Tell me the time, Jarvis, Leon said, staring at the last 10 Rings stronghold, now a smoking ruin. It is currently 11:08 p.m. local time. We ran 8 minutes behind schedule. Every time he saw 10 Rings firing missiles, Leon couldn't help himself. He had to wait for the launch, intercept the missile at the source, and detonate it before it left the launching platform. Force and fear together. Even the most devoted 10 Rings fighters would be shaken. Destroy their weapons. Take their bravado. Leon admitted it felt excessive, and he liked that. Standing above terrified men, watching them cry and plead, telling them, "Is that all?" truly disappointing, satisfied him in a way nothing else did. After we clear the 10 Rings here, next are the U.S. military bases, he said. Young Master Leon, what do you plan to do? Jarvis asked. Show strength and destroy the weapons, Leon replied. The people who decide wars are up top. Most soldiers are just following orders. They don't necessarily want to start wars. Your choices are always very wise, Jarvis intoned. Young Master Leon, Mr. White, Stark has entered the Afghanistan border and is trying to contact you. Should I connect him? Refuse for now. Tell him I'm busy, and if he wants revenge, he can fly west to look for the 10 Rings gang elsewhere. Leon headed for the nearest Eagle faction military base. There were 7 such bases in and around Afghanistan at the time. In the years to come, that number would swell to 19. Building so many installations around a poor, backward country made the Eagle faction's true intentions obvious. Their ambitions were wolfish, not noble. Leon had originally come intending only to eliminate the 10 Rings gang and leave the rest for later. But the little girl he'd met tonight had changed his mind. He was here now. It was the dead of night, and not doing anything more would have been a disservice to the life he remembered. Besides, the Eagle faction in this world wasn't exactly the same as in his old life. All the more reason to clip the claws of this white-headed eagle. As he descended over the base, anti-aircraft alarms screamed through every barracks. These soldiers were better trained, more vigilant, and more efficient than the terrorists he'd faced earlier. Before Leon could make a gesture, machine gun barrels were already trained on him, and the base's loudspeakers barked. Intruder! Land now! Stop where you are, or we will open fire. The bluster, the rapidly massing troops, the uniform muzzle flashes, it all made Leon sneer. He hadn't considered negotiation. When you were dealing with bandits, the language they understood was pain. He drew a breath, chilled it to a razor edge, and exhaled. A gust tore out of him. Bone-penetrating cold swept through the compound, and then sheets of ice spread outward, like vines climbing over concrete and metal. The ice crept over the buildings, invaded interiors, and locked weapons and ammunition in place. The soldiers were not spared. Men and women turned instantly into statues of glistening frost. The layer over their bodies was thin, however, deliberate. The base became a crystalline castle, cold and silent under the moon. Leon landed and tested the structure with a punch. The blow felt light to him, nothing uncomfortable, yet hairline fractures radiated from the impact and webbed across the wall. When the cracks reached a critical density, the section under his fist collapsed into a heap of iced rubble. That first collapse triggered a chain reaction. Walls already made brittle by the cold couldn't transmit force safely. One after another, buildings shattered. The destruction was not dull. The clinking and chime of cracking ice made the night sound like 1,000 pieces of jade being broken, or a chorus of crystal singing. By the time the noise faded, The base was a field of frosted wreckage, jagged shards reflecting the moonlight. Leon strode through the ruins. Directly ahead were the soldiers, thousands unconscious in their icy prisons. He had deliberately spared their lives. Any long-term effects would be minor, a warning rather than an execution. His control had been surgical. Every building, every depot of weapons and ammunition destroyed, while the people inside were left alive, if chilled and humiliated. "Asking for trouble," Leon murmured, and his eyes flashed hot red. Heat vision lanced out. Its temperatures could exceed the sun's surface. But here it was tuned to perfect restraint. The beams only melted the frost enough to revive the soldiers. They didn't burn. Men and women gasped back into consciousness, collapsing to the ground to hug themselves and rub their arms for warmth. No one dared move toward Leon. Even the lieutenants with 3-bar epaulets kept silent. "Now," Leon said, his voice carrying over the wreckage, "I'm giving you 1 week to withdraw your forces from Asia. If you don't, I'll come back. Don't say you weren't warned." The ice under his boots threw back a ghostly blue gleam in the moonlight. To the soldiers, Leon was an axe suspended above their heads. No one answered. He did not wait. Ordinary soldiers and mid-level officers had no authority to accept such a demand anyway. The warning was meant to make the Eagle faction hesitate. To fully resolve what came next, he would have to deal with Hydra and then survive a nuclear bomb, but those fights were for later. "Next target, 26 kilometers east. Handle it in 1 minute," he said, and shot into the sky. From the moment he had flown over the base to the moment it fell had been less than 3 minutes. He intended to knock out all the Eagle faction bases before the handful of satellites above him could even coordinate a response. Satellites were already gathering overhead. In the last hour, their numbers had grown. First, the Eagle faction added 2 high-resolution sats, then the neighboring Rabbit sent one when it noticed something odd. Gradually, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council had each brought their own eyes into orbit. Leon didn't mind. He almost wished they'd broadcast the whole thing live, so the people who had long suffered under the Eagle faction could see what had been done to their oppressors. Meanwhile, Tony Stark was en route. "Jarvis, what do you mean Leon didn't pick up my call and went off to trash a military base on his own?" he barked into his helmet. Jarvis answered with polite exasperation. "Sir, do you mean you plan to strike the Eagle faction base?" "Strike? That's not the right word. I was going to help them alleviate their anxiety about excess ammunition," Tony said, tone half amused, half annoyed. "That's a charitable phrasing," Jarvis replied dryly. "So you object because he did what you intended yourself?" Tony's lip curled. "That kid always steals my thunder. I want an explanation, especially after the Eagle faction handed Jericho over to a terrorist organization. What's his reason for going solo?" Chapter 29. Tony's Last Stubbornness. "Perhaps it was for a girl, sir," Jarvis offered thoughtfully. "If it was for a girl, that would explain it. He's as gallant as ever around them." "What did you say? A girl?" Tony snapped awake. Could one of his exes have been kidnapped by the Eagle faction, or did a local girl suffer at their hands? He was suddenly very interested. "It was a local child, and you could certainly call it bullying by the Eagle faction," Jarvis replied. Searching for more details, Shafiqa Mazari, 7 years old, born in Kabul, Afghanistan. 7? Tony's eyes went wide. 7 years old? Are you sure? "Yes, sir." Tony went quiet for a beat, then frowned. "Did you report to Leon that he was committing a crime?" "Sir, while Leon did kill 2 terrorists while escorting the Mazari family out of the Ten Rings harassment, that was an act of courage, not a crime." "Oh, so he attacked the Eagle faction base out of compassion for a little girl?" Tony felt his own earlier, baser thoughts flash shamefully through his mind. He'd spent so long in the world of tabloids and scandals that everything took on a certain hue. "I need to give up drinking and gambling," he muttered to himself. "That is correct. Do you have a different interpretation?" Jarvis asked, puzzled. "Cough. No, actually, I think you're right." Tony changed the subject. "Jarvis, set a course for Leon's current position." "Apologies, sir. Young Master Leon's current speed exceeds Mach 20, so pinpointing him is difficult." "He's moving that fast? Then take us to wherever he's headed." "Yes, sir." 5 minutes later, Tony arrived over an Eagle faction garrison. Below were frozen ruins, an expanse of ice and destruction, a cluster of soldiers huddled in wool blankets, shivering and waiting for rescue. Tony fell silent. Jarvis, you said Leon was here? This was young Master Leon's destination 5 minutes ago. He departed 3 minutes ago. You should have told me sooner, Tony griped. He's moved on to his next destination. No, his final destination. Tony ground his teeth. So he intends to destroy every single base. Then we have to get to his targets before he does and finish them ourselves. He didn't need to think hard to follow Leon's logic. Destroy the Eagle faction's garrison network, and even if he didn't kill many soldiers, he'd render their years of work useless and force a retreat. It fit Tony's own strategy, but Leon's approach was blunt and total, while Tony had intended only to disable weapons and ammo. Suddenly, his role as the older brother, someone who should be doing heroic things, felt threatened. Sir, I'm plotting a course now, but you sound displeased, Jarvis observed, analyzing tone and expression. Young Master Leon avenged you by taking out 10 Rings bases and helped you by destroying Eagle faction facilities. Isn't that good? It is. It almost made me cry, Tony said, chest tight. But it also makes me feel stifled. Analyze that. Stifled, unable to vent or confide when experiencing negative emotions due to circumstances, Jarvis answered. That's it. He didn't leave me a single enemy to fight. Don't you see? It's like he's treating me like a child. I don't follow. Legally speaking, you are Leon's older brother. That's the point. I should be protecting him. I should be the one doing these things. Accelerate, Jarvis. We must reach the last base before Leon, Tony ordered. Yes, sir. Tony's righteous indignation was admirable, and his determination was strong. Unfortunately, it wasn't fast enough. When they arrived at the final Eagle faction garrison, it was already a frozen wreck. All of Tony's battle plans and bravado froze along with the ruin. Where is he? Tony asked, stunned. He is above you, sir. Above me? Tony looked up and saw Leon descending, cape fluttering. Tony, you finally showed up, Leon called, grinning. I thought you were waiting for me to take a nap first. You're talking about naps? I was woken up by you through Jarvis and rushed over, and you just ran through the place like a locomotive, didn't leave me a single enemy. Leon shrugged. I told Jarvis to tell you, if you want revenge, go west. There are plenty more 10 Rings in the Middle East. Does it make any difference? Tony puffed. They're all 10 Rings, Leon said breezily. No one's got ABC stamped on their foreheads. They're all equally guilty. He glanced at the Super Mark I armor Jarvis was controlling nearby. But you look serious this time. You even brought my armor. Planning a long fight? Long fight? The enemies will either be dead or freezing to death, Tony snapped, flames spitting from his boots. I'm heading west. The 10 Rings there are my responsibility. Leon checked his watch. Fine, I won't interfere there, for now. I'll have lunch waiting at home when you get back. Then better make it dinner. And yes, Tony said, meaning he could fight all day. Leon was about to answer when he looked up into the sky. His eyes tracked a string of satellites moving hundreds of kilometers overhead. They caught up quickly, he sighed, then shouted, Tony, my Superman identity is being watched by several governments now. Don't contact me while I'm in uniform. That'll only draw suspicion. Already turning west and speeding away, Tony waved once to acknowledge the warning. Chapter 30, Prediction Experiment. It was almost 1 p.m. Los Angeles time when Leon shrugged off a few trailing satellites and flew back home. He made a simple lunch of fried eggs and pasta. Tony, as he had said, wouldn't be back until dinner after his run-in with the 10 Rings gang. After running a thrust test in the underground chamber, Leon blasted into space to sunbathe. He and Tony had agreed on an experiment to estimate the upper limit of the Kryptonian lineage's growth. Each day, Leon would test his thrust once before sunbathing and once afterward, keeping the sunbathing duration the same each session. They planned to repeat that for a month and feed the data to Jarvis to build a rough model that might reveal how far Leon's physical enhancements could go. Leon was happy with such a simple regimen. Sunbathing in space, turning his face to the sun, was his favorite part of the day. It felt like soaking in warm spring water, energizing him at his core. The rush of power was vivid and unmistakable. The gains were rapid and still accelerating. If a normal training curve rose and then plateaued, Leon was definitely on the steep rising edge. what he thought of as a frail yet explosive growth phase. The numbers agreed. After a few more days, his full body thrust had climbed to an enormous 400,000 tons. Every second under the sun felt like a shot of pure joy. Beep, beep! Jarvis's tones signaled the session was over. Leon begrudgingly opened his eyes, slipped out of the manned capsule, and prepared to head home for dinner. The little spacecraft that had once been intended simply to shield him during sunbathing had become his daily space park, a convenient foothold to avoid being seen directly in vacuum. If he sunbathed in the open, satellites from various countries would swarm around him like an exhibition crowd. After his return and another round of thrust tests, Jarvis announced, "Young Master Leon, Mr. Stark is being pursued by an Eagle faction flight formation on his way back. Would you like to assist? Tony's being pursued?" "Where?" Leon asked. "In the central section of the West Coast mountain range." Leon's smirk widened. So this was familiar territory. Tony had probably flown from the East Pacific into California and been picked up by military reconnaissance satellites. Jarvis continued, "Young Master Leon, Mr. Stark's situation is not optimistic. This is the footage from the scene." Jarvis projected the feed. It was Tony's helmet camera. One fighter after another burst out of the clouds. More than a dozen aircraft, enough for a sizable engagement. Tony muttered, "Shit." On the audio, then his view whirled 180 degrees as he tried to break away. Dozens of tracers zipped past. The screen shuddered as a burst of machine gun fire struck the suit. "Looks like the Air Force wants to teach him a lesson," Leon said, eyebrow raised but not overly worried. "I thought the Mark III can top out past Mach 8. Shouldn't Tony be able to outrun them?" Jarvis explained. "Given Mr. Stark's current physical condition, he can only sustain the armor's top burst speed for a very short time. Exceed that, and the strain on his body could cause cardiac failure. Normally the Mark III cruises around Mach 2, but even that continuously drains Mr. Stark's physical reserves." Leon laughed. "So he exhausted himself fighting the 10 rings and can't push the suit any harder. Classic." "You are correct," Jarvis replied. "Why hasn't he called you for help?" "Mr. Stark only sent this video," Jarvis said. Leon shook his head with a grin. Tony was stubborn. "Even if he's stubborn, I can't just sit by. He's my friend, my family in a way." He caught himself and smirked. "Help me prep the Mark II. I'm going to go give Tony a proper lesson." "Aren't you wearing the Superman suit? The iron armor limits your strength." "It's exactly why I'll wear the armor for this lesson." He wanted to make an appearance, to show up in a way that would make a point. This was a perfect opportunity. On the live feed, Tony weaved through missile locks like a storm-toughened petrel. His once lustrous red and gold suit was now mostly scorched black, pocked with bullet holes, and scuffed as if it had been seared on a grill. "Look at our Uncle Tony getting roughed up," Leon muttered as he headed for the garage. No time for pity, time for Hero Leon to save the day. Meanwhile, at the military command center, the same senior officers who had met earlier about the so-called Afghanistan Superman were assembled again, watching the satellite footage. The projection showed the battered gold and red armor darting through clouds with a blue and red suit nearby providing cover. "They aren't Superman," Rhodes concluded after a moment. "Those are just 2 humanoid exoskeletons. If it were Superman, he'd have wiped out our flight formation easily." Chapter 31, The Correct Use of an Iron Lump. When the 2 armors crossed the border, the monitoring crew mistook them for Superman and immediately hit the emergency alarm. That triggered the scramble of an elite squadron, more than a dozen fighter jets. "Where did these things come from?" An Air Force lieutenant colonel slammed his fist on the table. "Rhodes, did you just say just?" Rhodes rubbed his face. "I'm comparing them to Superman. I work in weapons research. I know what these machines mean." "They might be just exosuits," the colonel insisted. "Look at their technology," Rhodes said. "Unknown high output, stable power sources, ultra-high strength, precision metals, an anti-gravity system, and an energy transmission network. These are at least 10 years ahead of us. If the Pentagon had this, we could start planning global dominance tomorrow. I can't understand why someone would use tech like that to build walking suits. It's like putting tanks around a person and sending them to fight hand-to-hand. And they haven't fired a shot. Maybe they're on our side. Why don't we try to communicate first?" General Ross, the ranking lieutenant general, cut him off with a one-word decision. Whether they're friendly or not, shoot them down. Wait, what's that? Another exosuit? A colonel pointed at the projection. Everyone turned. A silver-white armor had appeared beside the golden-red one. Damn it, they're organized. Shoot them all! General Ross barked. From a distance, Leon watched the two armors cut through a hail of tracer rounds. He sped up and settled beside the disheveled Tony. Tony, I haven't seen you for half a day. How do you look like you've been soaking in an oil field? Leon called. A surprised shout came from inside the golden-red armor. Leon, next time you pop up, could you try to look less like a ghost? Tony's voice cracked. He nearly lost his balance in midair. And why are you wearing my armor? Leon tilted his head. Because you took mine. He glanced back. More than a dozen fighter jets were in pursuit, the barrage unrelenting. Dozens of flight paths braided through the sky, closing off escape routes. Tony narrowly dodged a stream of bullets. Did you forget you're supposed to wear your skin-tight undersuit? You can't just show up like this. Compared to Tony, Leon's evasive maneuvers were effortless. Mostly, Leon said dryly, I came to show you the correct way to use this iron lump. What? You brought me the Mark manual? Great, just what I needed, Tony pouted. The manual doesn't cover what's coming next. Watch, don't use your own strength for the whole thing. Leon memorized the positions of the jets behind them and suddenly shouted, Jarvis, deploy the flaps. Whoosh! The silver-white Mark II released its flaps and dropped speed without warning. Jarvis always did exactly what he was told. Instant, without doubt. The sudden deceleration sent the Mark II plunging straight into the oncoming fighter formation. What are you doing? Tony barked, stunned, as Leon flew past. The fighter pilots were equally dumbfounded. Heads turned as the silver-white armor streaked by cockpits. The pilots saw it wave right at them. Command! Target 3 decelerated and plunged into our formation, requesting a change of attack target. The squadron captain grabbed the radio and shouted. Permission to engage? You must shoot it down, he pleaded. Headquarters' response came back immediate and cold. Attack! 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 The squadron broke formation, some jets surging forward, others breaking back, encircling the Mark II as if drilled for the maneuver. What had looked like panic at first hardened into predatory hunger. The enemy diving into their middle might as well have been a gift on a platter. Aircraft 1, lock target. Aircraft 2, lock. The comms ticked off locks and corrections. Attack, launch air-to-air missiles. Launch. A full salvo. Every jet fired missiles and tarred the sky with machine gun fire to deny escape. Leon found himself surrounded by tracers and missile plumes. More than a dozen missiles accelerated toward the Mark II, closing fast. Leon did not panic. He shut down the propulsion system and fell in a low, horizontal parabolic arc, an unexpected motion. The missiles converged and detonated their guidance in front of the Mark II, then corrected, but the sudden unorthodox movement cut their effective speed to less than a third. Pursue downward, the squadron commander ordered as his pilots began to adjust. Jarvis, activate intelligent locking, Leon said, hands steady. He used neither supervision nor superstrength. He relied on the Mark II's onboard systems. Jarvis painted intercept vectors and tracked every missile on the helmet HUD. Good. Leon feathered the thrusters, keeping the armor always a fraction slower than the missile group closing in. When they were nearly on him, he shifted, braking, then a sudden surge, and in a blink the Mark II slammed against the side of one of the missiles with a metallic clang sticking to its casing. Jarvis, use an electric current to adhere to the missile hull and shield all electromagnetic emissions. Don't trigger the fuse sensors, Leon ordered. With those commands, he opened the thrusters at the Mark II's ankles and fired. The armor accelerated, carrying a live missile with it. Chapter 32. You are better this time. The silver-white Mark armor and the military green missile seemed to fuse into a single shape. They accelerated together, briefly pulling away from the other missiles and carving a huge arc across the sky. The remaining missiles began to lose lock, scattering in different directions, no longer swarming Leon like angry hornets. That scattering was also a sign they were moments from detonating. Leon counted in his head, released his control of the missile he'd been guiding, and moved away from its flank. 3, 2, 1, boom! He punched the throttle. A thunderous explosion erupted behind him. Several missiles struck the side of the missile Leon had been steering and detonated prematurely. The shockwave tore the air apart and set off the other scattered warheads. Fiery light raced over the West Coast mountains, and thick smoke rolled out across nearly 1,000 meters of sky. The fighter squadron was stunned. They couldn't understand how the Mark II had shaken missile locks so easily. They had no time to puzzle it out. Even at high altitude, the blast smoke held together, and the squadron dove into a curtain of black, choking vapor. "Target lost. Repeat, target lost," the captain reported. "Get out of the obscured area. Accelerate and continue pursuit. Do not let the target escape." Command ordered. Leon did not use the confusion to run. Instead, he turned and headed straight back into the smoke. "Jarvis, give me a flight trajectory simulation based on the enemy aircraft's heading and speed," he ordered. The HUD projection on the Mark II flickered, then overlaid a dozen possible flight paths through the smoke. Leon ran rapid mental calculations, picked a trajectory, and accelerated into the haze. "Prepare to turn, Jarvis." A fighter suddenly burst out of the black ahead of the Mark II. The suit made an emergency stop and flipped upward to avoid a collision. The startled pilot in the jet pulled the plane into a steep climb, slammed a switch in his cockpit to open the weapons bay, and began spraying bullets. "Aircraft 13 has the target. Reporting. Aircraft 13 has the target," he called. "Attack! Attack!" the captain barked. Bullets peppered the Mark II, slamming Leon against the suit and rocking him. The pilot pressed the thrusters to the limit and chased at top speed. Then the Mark II turned again. Before the jet could follow, another fighter erupted from the smoke directly in front of it. The two planes clipped one another, the high-speed friction tearing away large sections of both airframes. One jet erupted in flames and black smoke as its engines and systems failed. The pilot of Aircraft 13, with no other option, pushed the nose down, pulled the eject, and was flung clear. "Aircraft 13 has crashed! Ejecting now!" came the frantic transmission. The other jet didn't fare any better. Its canopy shattered, the pilot slammed into the controls and went limp. Leon saw that something was very wrong. He reversed, caught the falling pilot, and hauled him from the wreck before the plane went down. From the sky, Aircraft 13's pilot watched two aircraft plummet beneath him and heard no second report. "Aircraft 7 collided with me and is falling. He has no signal. He may be under enemy pursuit, requesting rescue. Mayday! Mayday!" he shouted. The remaining fighters immediately peeled off and dove to render aid. Leon hovered above the chaos for a moment and gave a small, ironic smile. "Seems the exhibition's over," he said. He set the unconscious pilot gently on the ground, then rose and headed back toward Los Angeles. "Good luck, buddy," he murmured as he left. On the ground, Command saw the Mark II on satellite and knew it was too late to pursue. General Ross slammed his fist on a table in anger. "Damn it, they escaped. Launch more air units." "It's too late, General," Rhodes said flatly. "Judging from the accelerations that thing pulled, they're gone." On the other side of the city, Leon and Tony met up and flew back to the seaside villa together. With the Mark II's size and speed, as long as it wasn't locked by satellite, it wouldn't be traced back to their home. Jarvis kept a silent watch on orbital feeds while they cruised. "I didn't use weapons, right?" "Just like you asked. No direct conflict, no casualties," Leon said. "But after watching you out there, don't you feel like you learned something?" he added, aimed at Tony. He'd come to show off, yes, but he'd also held back to avoid dragging Tony into a military dispute. He'd even saved a pilot to keep things clean. Tony was struck dumb for a beat. Jarvis had been streaming real-time footage to him. Leon's control over speed, timing, and trajectory was nothing Tony could produce at the moment. He'd only just started flying the suit himself. "It was impressive," Tony admitted at last. Tony, naturally stubborn, tried to insist Leon had used external power. "You used your own power, didn't you?" "It had to be," he muttered. "Jarvis saw everything." Leon replied. The AI chimed in without prompting. "Yes, sir. Young Master Leon operated the Mark armor for the entire engagement. All systems showed no anomalies." Tony knew Jarvis was right, but he persisted for the drama. "Still, 2 jets went down. You didn't resolve it peacefully." Leon grinned. "I didn't fire weapons or attack. They made mistakes. Besides, Tony, you're not supposed to be that strict with yourself." Tony threw his hands up in mock surrender. All right, my dear Leon. Since you made dinner for me, I'll admit you were better this time. Leon lit up. Dinner? Tony blinked. You didn't make dinner? I'm starving. I could eat every cheeseburger in LA right now. I didn't, Leon confessed. I had just run my strength test and gone to rescue one of our pilots. No time to cook. Order takeout, Tony suggested. Agreed, Leon smiled. While we wait, maybe you should tell Rhodes that today's Iron Man in the field was you, Tony bristled. Why would I do that? That would expose me. With your style, you'll be exposed sooner or later. If Rhodes is told in advance, he can be ready and help smooth things over. Tony mulled it, then nodded slowly. That actually makes sense. When did you get so sneaky? Learn it at school from scheming little girls. I learned it stopping you bringing strange women home when I was a kid, Leon shot back. You really should thank me for that, Tony said, laughing. Their voices drifted across the warm, orange sunset. The sea rolled like a field of autumn leaves, and in the reflected light, 3 Mark armors flew in formation toward Stark Mansion. Chapter 33, News about Superman. A few days passed. Life in the Stark household stayed calm and ordinary. Leon checked in every morning to bask in the sun, waiting for the new university term to start. Tony, as usual, didn't go to the office. He woke up, shoveled buttered bread into his mouth, and then headed straight back to the Middle East. According to him, the 10 rings would soon be gone. Ever since he spoke with Rhodes, the military hadn't gotten a clear bead on him. Pepper, meanwhile, had found Tony's armor 2 nights ago, riddled with bullet holes, and had been furious, but as ever, there was little she could do. When her anger ran out, she went back to work, carrying Stark Industries' enormous responsibilities on her shoulders. It was a household that rolled along like the sea beyond the mansion. Sometimes there were waves, but most of the time the surface was smooth and placid. For the world outside, however, Superman's arrival had begun to ferment, and subtle currents were stirring. KNKV television reports. That morning, Leon had finished his routine exercise in the space gym, made breakfast, and turned on the local news. KNKV led with Superman. Superman has appeared in our world. That point seems beyond doubt, the female anchor said, eyes serious. Although he hasn't been seen again in the last few days, countless witnesses continue to testify to his existence and pray for his return. The footage cut to a noisy press conference. On the podium stood a middle-aged Afghan man with half-white hair and beard. Flashbulbs bloomed below the stage, but his gaze was steady and fierce. It was Superman who saved our country, saved our people, he bellowed, straining to make the camera catch every syllable. That night, I was lucky enough to capture him fighting for us. He is Superman, a pillar for all of us. He has no beginning or end, and nothing can stand against him, someone else shouted from the crowd. He is our God, our Savior. The Father is in him, and he and the Father are one, the man cried into the press. Behind him, a screen flickered to life, playing shaky footage of a figure facing down a missile. Look at him. How magnificent. He chased away the jackals. He is our shepherd, and we are his lambs, the man screamed. The segment returned to the KNKV studio. The man is Abdullah, an Afghan war correspondent who captured Superman's first appearance and declared at the press conference that Superman was a reincarnation of the Holy Spirit, the anchor explained. Since then, scores of others have come forward to share their encounters. The tape rolled on. A little girl to camera, eyes bright. 2 bad men tried to break in that night, and Superman came and stopped them. Her father added, Superman said the 10 rings would soon be far away from us. And he did it. Now even the Eagle faction. The sentence trailed away, and the local feed cut to another interview. He fell from the sky, like a shooting star. I didn't even make a wish. He just took out the terrorists who wanted to hurt my sister, a boy said, wildly gesturing. A string of short clips followed. Afghan guards saluting a photograph of Superman. Villagers in a battered hamlet, sobbing and shouting his name over a rice field. Grainy shots of the figure looming over a battlefield. After 5 minutes of witness footage, the broadcast switched back to the studio. As more people corroborate Superman's presence, we must consider what kind of effect he might have on society, the anchor said. Is he like the comics Superman, righteous and selfless, a god among men? Or is he a costume-wearing charlatan using the name to feed his ego? Our reporters note that many of our returning soldiers were forced to abandon aid missions under pressure from Superman's interventions, the anchor continued. Whether he is a savior or a masked demagogue, we can't make an immediate, definitive judgment. Next, sociologist Francis Wyndham will analyze the phenomenon. Leon listened with mild amusement as the newly introduced scholar wandered from comic book tropes to childhood speculation and back again, drawing elaborate, well-referenced conclusions that almost made Superman sound like a paralyzed, milk-loving savior. Leon found himself almost buying into the run-on theory. "You're watching those boring reports again? Haven't you had enough after all these days?" Tony called, patting down the stairs. "Either it's full of praise or full-on slander," he continued, tossing a roll of newspaper on the table as he sat beside Leon. "What's the point of these takes?" "They've all been funded politically. They want to push an angle," Tony said. "Why do you enjoy watching this stuff?" Leon glanced at the paper headline. "Mysterious mech man appears again in the Middle East, a clumsy imitation of Superman." No mention of armored suits or Tony's raids, just a dismissive reference. Tony had been working himself hoarse for days, nearly wiping the 10 rings out across several regions, and the media barely covered him. If they did, it was a line or two before shifting back to Superman. No wonder Tony felt slighted. He wasn't one to hide his good deeds for pure nobility. "Maybe you should buy ad space and get them to write real stories about you," Leon suggested. Headline could be, "Iron Man returns, protector of Middle Eastern civilians," Tony said, raising an eyebrow. Then he made a face. "Good idea, but you know I'm not that vain. I'm doing this for you, Leon." "Oh, sure," Leon said. "If you really wanted to do it for me, bribe the networks to tell the truth." Tony grabbed a piece of toast and chewed thoughtfully. "If you want, I could do that." "Do you really think it's necessary?" Tony asked, mouth full. Leon rested his chin on his hand. "Once Hydra is finished and my strength becomes clear, the press will speak for itself." "Exactly," Tony said, tapping the TV screen with his index finger. "The media's tongue will only praise those who can make them shut up." Chapter 34, Abdullah's Videos. "But I still don't get it," Tony said, waving a piece of toast. "You were in Afghanistan for one night. How did you pick up so many devout followers?" "You mean fans," Leon corrected. "Same thing," Tony chewed. "Especially that reporter who looked like he'd been through hell. He talks about you like you're some kind of god or Holy Spirit on TV every day. Total fanaticism." "You mean Abdullah? I don't know what's going on with him either. Maybe it's just local customs?" Leon shrugged. Tony made a face. "I thought you'd brainwashed him, like Clark in Superman, messing with people's memories." He waved his hands for emphasis. "I wish I could do that. Sounds fun." "How is that fun? Tell me how it'd be fun." Leon smirked. "You'd better be asking to hear about it, not to imagine anything," Tony said, then launched into the story. "Anyway, Abdullah said in an interview that you saved his life." "That's right," Leon said. "He was inside the Jericho missile's blast radius. I saved him and asked him to spread the footage and a message." "Oh, so he's the guy." Tony's face lit up. "He was in the video Jarvis sent me. No wonder he looked familiar." "You're weirdly interested," Leon observed. "Uh-huh." Tony swallowed another bite. "He says, to thank you, he's going to use all his money to buy Warner stock, so I had Pepper acquire Warner instead." Leon's mouth twitched. "Of course you did. You know how to make a profit." "Don't say that. The whole world's paying attention to Superman now," Tony said, licking his fingers. "After acquiring Warner, Stark Industries' stock jumped too." He wiped his hands with a napkin. "I'm more curious how you managed to get them to sell. Everyone's obsessed with DC now. Why would they give it up?" Tony shrugged. "Some other financial groups and countries started applying pressure, so I seized the opportunity." "Seized the opportunity? You don't sell weapons anymore. How did you get clearance to buy into that market?" Leon asked. "But I sell something else now." Tony tapped the arc reactor at his chest. "New energy. Everyone wants it." Leon's eyes widened. "You exposed your identity?" Tony looked left and right, made 2 nervous turns, then lifted his palms. "Pretty much. Rhodes let it slip. That guy's mouth is like a public service announcement. Can't keep a secret." Leon didn't believe it. "Rhodes is funny, sure, but if he couldn't keep secrets, he couldn't work on classified stuff." "I think you're just jealous of Superman's popularity and purposely outed yourself to steal attention," Leon said. Tony went quiet, looking at the ceiling as if composing himself. Then he suddenly stood. I was helping you handle the pressure. With so many people scrutinizing and misunderstanding you, someone has to step up and lead. He waved his hand back. All right, I'm off. Today's my last day in the Middle East. The 10 rings are history. Oh, right. Tony reached the doorway, then turned back on a heel. I've got a press conference tomorrow. Don't forget to attend. Leon watched him go. Half a minute later, he heard the unmistakable whir and roar of an Iron Man suit igniting and taking off. Tony, he's not going to use the press conference to out himself as Iron Man, is he? He watched the Mark III disappear into the sky, speechless. Tony's reveal seemed almost inevitable. The debut of Iron Man could become a defining, headline-making moment. Leon had imagined every possible motive Tony might have for confessing the suit: ambition, ego, necessity. But he had never considered that Tony might do it simply to chase attention. This world is crazy, Leon muttered. Whatever, Tony won't die. Let him bask. He stood, tore off his shirt, and became Superman in one smooth motion, launching into the sky and heading for space. S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury had heavy, pronounced dark circles, like coal hanging under his lids. Is this your investigation report? He asked, dropping the folder and staring at Agent Coulson. There's less here than what was broadcast on TV. At least the TV crew talked to the locals. Coulson lowered his eyes. Sorry, Director. Superman hasn't reappeared since that day. We haven't found any leads. But the video on TV contains a lot of information, Fury said. Coulson tapped his tablet and handed it over. Fury's eyelid twitched. Coulson always reached for the tablet in that same way. The device played the clip Fury had watched hundreds of times over the past few days. It was divided into 3 parts. The first was Abdullah's on-the-ground footage, Superman taking hits, resisting vehicle-mounted missiles, and the Jericho warhead. The second was Abdullah, on Superman's behalf, broadcasting a message from the Eagle faction. All foreign forces withdraw from the border and abandon your invasion immediately. The third section was the reporter himself, an hour-long monologue exalting Superman, spreading fervent belief, and equating him repeatedly with God. Fury watched it through. The first segment was the most important. It was the most complete combat footage of Superman anyone had. No official satellite had captured the sequence fully. The only reasonably comprehensive record was Abdullah's recording, and that made it invaluable for assessing Superman's capabilities. When the video ended, Fury looked up. What's your conclusion? Director, Coulson said carefully, based on what we can see, Superman's defensive power and speed exceed anything on Earth, living or mechanical. Whether he's the comic book Superman or not, his demonstrated power is extraordinary. Our best course of action is to befriend him and try to stabilize his emotional state. Fury rubbed his pager, thinking, is he arrogant, extreme in temperament? Do we need to consider suppressing him? Suppress him? Coulson blinked. With all due respect, Director, we don't have the means. Fury glanced at the pager in his hand. My question is, if we did, would it be necessary? Chapter 35, Female Agent Under the Bed. Coulson didn't answer right away. He thought for a few seconds, then said, I don't think we should try to suppress Superman. Why? Fury asked, looking without expression at the footage of Leon, unscathed in the middle of a raging inferno. He's only shown up once, but he wiped out the Eagle faction military base and forced them to retreat. Coulson explained, calmly, as if listing evidence. He didn't hurt any civilians. Matter, his purpose was clear. He intervenes on behalf of bullied, vulnerable people. Everyone who's encountered him has come away with an extremely positive impression. They're grateful. Taken together, he looks more like a savior or a judge. He operates from a consistent moral core. Trying to suppress someone like that would provoke resistance, Coulson continued. It would create massive conflict and make the situation uncontrollable. Fury nodded slowly. He'd been wrestling with the same question for days. When you were up against a powerful figure with a moral baseline and public goodwill, confrontation was risky. But the thought of not being in control gnawed at him. Even after concluding that treating Superman with goodwill was the pragmatic choice, he still wanted, impossibly, to subdue him and bring him under S.H.I.E.L.D.'s control. What if, Fury said, unable to hide the edge in his voice, we had the power to beat him flat? If Captain Marvel moved, she could probably crush him. Any other advice? Coulson took a breath and considered the hypothetical, then shook his head. I still don't think we should act. Fury's brow tightened. We don't know the full extent of his abilities, Director. If he's anything like the Superman from the comics, powers augmented by the sun, then once we engage him, unless we kill him, we'd be facing an adversary who just keeps getting stronger. His future would be unpredictable. Fury stared at the image on the screen as if trying to peer through the pixels and into the man himself. The room sat in a taut silence for a few seconds. All right, he admitted finally. You're right, Coulson. He closed the file and slid the pager back into the drawer. Your mission continues, but differently. Coordinate our personnel. Keep constant surveillance on him. When he shows up, try to make contact and win him over. And control the narrative, Fury added. Keep public opinion balanced. Not one-sided praise, but not a flood of negative content either. Nothing that would make him turn against us. Yes, Director. Coulson gathered the documents and tablet with practiced deference and left without comment. Only after the door shut did Fury lean back, look out of the window, and pull a Superman comic from the pile on the desk. He flipped through a few pages, then tossed it back. The world isn't peaceful, he muttered. That plan needs accelerating, and with the level 7 female agents, we only have Iron Knight. That's not nearly enough. Beep beep. Jarvis's polite reminder woke Leon from the sunbath. He pressed the control, closed the hatch, and steered the ship back toward Earth with the same bland, disinterested air he wore for everything not related to sunlight. Lately, his power growth had been accelerating. While he was exposed to the sun, the sensation was addictive. Every cell in his body felt catapulted, as if riding a rocket. It was exhilarating and dangerous. To keep experiments controlled, he'd locked himself into a fixed daily exposure for the past month. If he let himself slip, he was sure he could live forever in orbit. Wherever sunlight reached would feel like home. It took him seconds to return to his mansion on the Los Angeles coast. He stepped through the door and glanced up at the electronic display on the wall. Only 4 in the afternoon, he said. Tony won't be back until 7, maybe 8. I'll have dinner alone. He started toward his room to change into casual clothes, but stopped after 2 steps as if something had made him freeze mid-stride. His superhearing, usually dampened to avoid sensory overload, had picked up a second heartbeat in the house. It was slow, powerful, and too close for comfort. Leon waited, listening. There was no reply from Tony. The rhythm wasn't Tony's familiar, weaker pulse. Rather than asking Jarvis, Leon activated his X-ray vision. The world peeled away in layers until his sight slipped through walls and ceiling and into Tony's bedroom. The huge bed, the rugs, the furniture all vanished into transparency. There, under the mattress in the shallow crawl space between floor and bed, a woman lay curled as if asleep. Natasha? Leon's voice caught. She was tucked into less than 30 centimeters of space beneath Tony's 3-meter-wide bed, wine-red hair damp and splayed on the floor, shoulders exposed, hands limp at her sides. Her breathing was long and even, as if she were sleeping peacefully. From his angle, it looked like some strange, dormant person had grown out from under the bed. Leon felt oddly unsettled. Coming home to find the renowned Black Widow hidden under his older brother's bed was more suffocating than he expected. Why her? Why there? He ran through possibilities in a rush. Was she hiding from someone? Was this a stakeout gone wrong? He pictured SA SHIELD agents sneaking into family homes in that manner and shook his head. It didn't add up. Half embarrassed and half green with envy at Natasha's proximity to Tony, even as a joke, he forced himself not to project his private thoughts. Jarvis, he asked, keeping his voice level, did anyone come to the house after I left today? No, Master Leon, Jarvis replied. After you departed, I sealed all entrances. Chapter 36, Kidnapping Stark. All of them? Even the sewers? Has anyone blocked you today? Lion asked. I have been operating continuously and have no record of being blocked, Jarvis replied. But the sewers, shouldn't they count as an entrance? Jarvis hesitated. Even the AI was confused. Who would crawl into a house through the sewers? But looking at the wet shape under Tony's bed, if she hadn't come through the sewers, where else could she have come from? When Tony sleeps tonight, he's going to get a good whiff of this lady's lingering scent, Lion murmured, barely containing a chuckle at the thought. He had no intention of letting whoever was under the bed stay there. Whoever was sneaking around his brother's room clearly didn't have good intentions. "Do you mean a woman has infiltrated Mr. Stark's bedroom?" Jarvis asked. "Exactly. She's resting under the bed right now." Lion stroked his chin with interest. "Let's see what this excellent agent plans to do." "Jarvis, cooperate with me in a bit." "Yes, young Master Lion." Lion put on an earpiece and walked toward Tony's room. He pushed the door open and deliberately made his footsteps loud, pretending to casually look around. "Jarvis, are you sure the air system detected a strong abnormal odor in Tony's room? He hasn't had any guests lately. How could there be a strange smell?" "Yes, young master. The air system detected abnormal odor factors," Jarvis said. "It's unlikely to be from normal human activity. There's a concentrated source." Lion sniffed theatrically. "I don't smell anything. Sniff, sniff. Ugh!" He took a few exaggerated sniffs, then suddenly recoiled, clutching the doorframe and dry heaving. This wasn't an act alone. His super-sensitive sense of smell picked up a dense, rank stench. After deliberately taking deep inhalations to find the source, the odor hit him hard, making his stomach turn. "What is that?" "It smells like a dried salted fish left in a swill bucket and then pickled for 3 days. Lion ground his teeth and forced himself to suppress his enhanced nose. "Your acting is excellent, young Master Lion," Jarvis said quietly into his ear. "If the system hadn't detected it, I would have almost been deceived." "No, I really did smell something. They must have used chemical deodorizers, but they couldn't fool me." Lion rubbed his nose and kept his voice low. "Keep cooperating." He covered his nose and walked to the bed, calling out loudly, "The smell is pretty strong. What has Tony been doing?" "Jarvis, you said the source is under the bed." "Yes, the diffusion source of the odor molecules is under the bed. Shall I deploy the robot vacuum to clean it?" Jarvis offered. "No," Lion said. He, half kneeling, one hand on the bed's edge, pretended to reach under. "I suspect it's one of Tony's life-size dolls. If you clean it up, he'll be furious." "I'll just take it out and wash it. I can't imagine how Tony would manage something so smelly," Jarvis replied through the speaker. Lion slid his hand under the bed, about to pull whatever was there out. Then, without warning, a black, soft whip shot out from the darkness and wrapped around Lion's arm 3 times like a python. A faint, almost imperceptible force flowed through it. Lion's calculations pegged it at roughly 2.5 times Tony's arm strength. For an ordinary person, that would be tremendous power. Lion's casual demeanor vanished. Natasha was using lethal force. This wasn't just sneaking around, she was prepared to break bones. He feigned surprise, letting himself fall in the direction the whip pulled him. "Ah!" he cried as his back hit the floor. He let out a pained sound, then closed his eyes and played unconscious. In a blur, Natasha slid from under the bed, kicking off a bedpost to launch herself forward. She wrapped her legs around Lion's waist with a movement so tight it felt boneless, used both hands on the floor to lever her hips, and slammed him back down. With a heavy thud, Lion landed, letting out a cooperative groan before feigning total unconsciousness. "Humph." Natasha took a steady breath, twisted Lion's shoulder to double-check, then scanned him with practiced efficiency. She was confident. Her training made it possible to kill an ordinary person in an instant. She even paused to pat his chest. "Nice pecs," she observed, then resumed business. "Madam, you are trespassing on Mr. Stark's private property. Please move away from Mr. Lion and leave this residence immediately, or I will notify the police." Jarvis warned in a coordinated voice. "Oh, really?" Natasha pulled a black tactical backpack from under the bed and produced ropes and a firearm. She snapped the gun's slide back to show it was loaded. "If you call the police, this gun will be pointed at your young master." Ignoring Jarvis after the warning, Natasha fired several rounds that shattered the room's electronics. She turned Lion over, bound him tightly with rope, and checked his vitals. He was unconscious, but alive. While doing so, she found and destroyed the earpiece Lion was wearing. Only when she was certain of the situation did she straighten and speak into the communicator in her ear. "General Dreykov, Natasha reporting." Seconds later, she received permission. The mission encountered an unexpected situation. The target's brother, Lion Stark, discovered me using the household AI, she said into the mic. "Requesting change of plan. Instead of kidnapping Tony Stark, we will use Lion Stark to threaten him and obtain energy and armor technology. A flat male voice answered through the earpiece. Plan change approved. Received, Natasha acknowledged, calm and professional, then removed the communicator. She was ready to put the new plan into motion. When she turned back, Lion, who should have still been out cold, opened his eyes and looked directly at her. "You're not working for a sealed, are you?" Leon said, an intrigued smile pulling at his mouth. "That makes things interesting." Chapter 37, Slice Study. Natasha, you just mentioned General Dreykov. If I remember correctly, he's the leader of the Red Room, right? Under Natasha's horrified gaze, Leon snapped free with ease. The ropes binding him burst into pieces and scattered across the floor. "Which means you're still under the Red Room's control," he said. Leon rose and patted himself off. "This isn't right. At this point in time, you should be." He cut himself off as he looked down. Natasha moved without hesitation. Even facing someone strong enough to rip through high-strength polyethylene rope, she attacked with the speed and precision of a hunted spider, quick, cold, and aimed straight for the vital points. Her fists, elbows, and knees came in a flurry. She relied on speed to overcome strength, a tactic she had used countless times to beat stronger opponents. But this time, her surprise failed. Leon, who looked barely 17 or 18, blocked every strike with greater speed, and with only one hand. When that hand casually closed around her fist, she couldn't wrench free, no matter how hard she pulled. The grip felt less like a hand and more like a cold hydraulic clamp. Shock and incredulity crossed her face, but Natasha's battlefield instincts didn't slow her for long. She pushed off the floor and tried to dislocate a joint to wriggle free with a desperate, trained move. "Hey! Don't do that. I don't want you accidentally tearing yourself in half because you resist," Leon warned. To him, Natasha was paper thin against his strength. If he eased up while they were in contact, the result could be catastrophic. He wrapped her in a biofield to prevent any accidental damage to Tony's bedroom as he held her. Natasha didn't know that. All she registered was that the calm young man she'd just been fighting suddenly looked concerned. For a moment, she wondered, who was this super agent who'd invaded someone's house? Then a huge force drove through her arm. She was slammed into the wall and pinned so securely she couldn't move. She tried everything, yoga escapes, breaking her own arm to create leverage, anything to buy a counterattack, but the power holding her made every attempt futile. Slowly her eyes shifted, from anger to despair, then a strange, resigned relief. Instinctively, she curled her right middle finger toward the inside of her wrist, trying to trigger a device there. A large hand pinched the back of her neck and squeezed gently. Natasha's body went limp and she lost consciousness. "It seems that's the only way to keep our Black Widow sister quiet for a while," Leon said as he supported her drooping form. He adjusted his hold, carried her out of the bedroom, and pushed the door open into Tony's hallway. "Young Master Leon, I am relieved to see you are unharmed," Jarvis said, alarmed. The electronics in the bedroom were smashed. The system had no idea what had happened inside. "Shall I contact the authorities and transfer this intruder to them?" "No." Leon shook his head. "This isn't a simple break-in. She's got secrets. I'm going to bring her in for a study." He wondered at the scene he'd just interrupted. The Marvel timeline he'd expected seemed to have an odd detour. Was this universe a branching one, an alternate like What If? But the characters looked just like their movie counterparts. He shook off the thought and began descending the stairs. "By the way, tell Mr. Stark to order his own takeout when he returns. I'll probably be in the lab all night," Leon added. "Understood, young Master Leon." Jarvis paused, then asked, "Shall I switch off the laboratory surveillance while you examine her?" "Keep everything on. All of it," Leon said flatly. "What do you think I'm going to do?" "As you wish, young master." Jarvis's tone returned to its usual measured calm. "I will conduct an initial check." Leon carried Natasha into the lab, cleared a spot on the bench with a sweep of his hand, and laid her down. He shrugged off his jacket, pulled on a pair of medical gloves, and moved with the awkwardness of an amateur anatomist, like a medical student preparing for a first dissection. But when he turned on his X-ray vision, his skill leapt forward. "First, a full-body scan," he muttered, half to himself. "Let's see." He let his eyes scan beneath the skin, muscles, fascia, bone. Then he sighed appreciatively for a second. Her figure is impressive. Slender shoulders, full hips, very fit. Ahem, focus, Leon. No bombs, no poison packets were visible. Then he spotted a tracker on her right leg. On her wrist sat a small, familiar device. So she tried to use a self-destruct on herself earlier, he said aloud. Suicide to avoid capture or failing a mission. Extreme, and not something Natasha would typically choose. In the movies, Natasha Romanoff had sacrificed herself to save others only when facing impossible odds. She didn't usually resort to ending her own life preemptively. Was she being controlled? Leon recalled seeing in the Black Widow movie, years down the timeline, how the Red Room had chemically manipulated Natasha's sister. But that timeline shouldn't apply here. He examined the top of her head with his vision through vascular networks and brain tissue. Everything looked physically normal. Maybe my X-ray isn't picking it up, he thought. He wheeled in microscopes, magnetoencephalography units, brain readers, and other stark devices. A dozen large instruments surrounded the workbench. Leon rubbed his hands together. The past few days after the Ten Rings incident hadn't been idle. He'd spent spare hours studying biology and neuroscience, mostly as a hobby. Now that knowledge suddenly felt useful. He carefully removed the tracker and the wrist device, then began extracting cerebrospinal fluid and brain cells for analysis. Brain function, structurally normal, nerve nodes, normal, synaptic transmission within expected ranges. His hands moved with surprising speed and confidence. For cell slice observation, it took him only a glance to memorize an image and draw conclusions. When he hit tricky details, he asked Jarvis to pull up relevant papers. As the night went on, Leon's understanding surged. At one point, he hunched over a microscope and grinned. "Got it! Young Master Leon, what have you found?" Jarvis prompted. "I found the cause." Leon's excitement showed. Physically, her brain looks fine, but there's a foreign chemical compound in her cerebrospinal fluid. He printed a scan and pointed. This substance is acting on her basal ganglia and disrupting conscious control. If I'm correct, her self-awareness hasn't been entirely eliminated. The drug fragments her consciousness. Part of it follows commands, while part remains her own thoughts. That divided consciousness preserves logical processing, but erodes emotional judgment, leaving her capable of following orders without moral resistance. The person who engineered this compound is both brilliant and monstrous. Leon cleared the bench again, already thinking ahead. Next step, design a targeted inhibitor. If we can block this chemical's effect, she may regain integrated control when she wakes. And who knows, when this works, there could be more to learn. Chapter 38, 1% probability for Leon. Diagnosing an illness and reverse engineering a cure was simple when the basic conditions were met. Once he confirmed Natasha was under mental control and that the control was chemical, figuring out an inhibitor was just a matter of thought. He ran simulations in his mind like a supercomputer, then handed the best candidates off to Jarvis for real-world modeling. 20 minutes later, a vial of bright red counteragent sat on the tray. 87% success rate, right? Leon pulled a dose into a syringe. Yes, Jarvis replied. There is a 12% chance the agent will fail and a 1% chance of drug interaction leading to brain death. This is the limit of current medical technology, Leon said, shrugging. He looked at Natasha. If we had the time and ethics committees, we should be doing a Phase 3 randomized double-blind trial. But looking at her condition, there isn't time to recruit volunteers. Natasha had come to consciousness on the workbench and was frantically tearing at the ropes, trying to resist. Leon stood calm, syringe poised. Don't struggle. It's almost time. Be careful not to break the needle. You tied me up once. Now I'm tying you up. So we're even, she muffled through the tape. Miss Romanoff must understand, he said, meeting her bloodshot eyes. Our patient has consented by default. She chooses treatment. He flicked the syringe to remove air bubbles. Be mentally prepared. I'm an unconventional doctor. This agent might cause brain death, but it works. If something goes wrong, we'll just call it survivor bias. In his previous life, Leon had been taciturn. In this one, the influence of Tony Stark sometimes made him loquacious at tense moments. The inhibitor goes into your arm. Like, do you want to take off your suit or tear the sleeve? Tear the sleeve off my combat suit, right? Leon ripped the sleeve away. used his strength to keep her steady, and swabbed her pale, smooth upper arm with alcohol. Final step, 1 second to decide whether to refuse treatment. 1. Time's up. You agree to continue. Excellent. Time is short. We won't bother with family consent. If the worst happens, we'll cremate and return the ashes to the Red Room. Natasha's eyes widened, and she tried to make a sound. No anesthetic? She croaked. Don't worry. We didn't bring any. He pushed the needle in casually. The red agent flowed into her. Done. See? It didn't hurt. Treatment course, incredibly short. He withdrew the syringe, pressed a cotton swab to the site, then returned it to the tray Benben, the mechanical hand, was holding. For a moment, Leon stopped talking and watched her. His offhand remarks belied a serious thought. As a main character in this world, Natasha couldn't be the unlucky 1 in 100. The antidote he'd synthesized was the best possible under the circumstances. Even the world's top doctors could only shave fractions off the fatality rate. The original researchers had designed the control chemical to be irreversible, hidden in the cytoplasm of brain cells, so removing it would kill brain cells and risk fatal damage. That Leon had made any inhibitor at all was practically a miracle. 1% fatality, he thought, was still unacceptable. It looks like the inhibitor is starting to work, he said, removing his gloves, sanitizing his hands, and drying them with a sterile wipe from Benben. He watched as Natasha's expression smoothed and silently held his breath for a second. Jarvis, if she hits that 1% and dies, would you call that lucky or unlucky? Objectively, Jarvis answered, hitting a 1% event is statistically lucky. But if the event is death, then clearly it's unlucky. Your objectivity suits you, Leon replied. Humans don't think like that. When disaster strikes, even a tiny probability becomes a 100% nightmare. I will try to think that way in the future, young Master Leon. No need. Mechanical thinking is your advantage. Many young women like that type. He cut himself off as Natasha's eyelashes fluttered. Oh, Natasha is awake. Her amber eyes opened, confusion and scattered focus swimming behind them. Leon smiled. A foolish look. That's it, Miss Romanoff. Congratulations on a successful operation. The confused look meant the chemical control was loosening. Her scattered consciousness began to reassemble, though it would take time. He untied her and removed the tape from her mouth. Natasha's reaction was instant. Her pupils pinpricked. She moved with the reflexive grace of a trained operative. Her legs wove around Leon's waist. She pivoted and in a blur of practiced motion locked into a rear naked choke. Over a decade of muscle memory had taken over. She tightened, expecting resistance, only to find Leon unperturbed. Her arms felt locked to something immovable. For a heartbeat, her face blanked as fragmented memories crowded in. Leon then lifted her gently and set her back on the bench. The choke broke. She blinked and looked at him. You saved me, she said, her tone a tangle of relief, disbelief, and something else, shame. Her hands hung awkwardly at her sides, and she dropped her head. What have I done? She had believed herself condemned to a life bound by the Red Room's control. Instead, fate had handed her salvation via the man she'd been sent to kill. As memories poured back, remorse, rage, and anxiety surged through her. It looks like you're recovering well, Leon said. Natasha started, then sat up slowly on the bench, flustered. Thank you very much. No, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. It was subconscious. I'm sorry, are you hurt? Chapter 39. You can come to me if you want to do anything. Natasha's words came out jumbled. It was obvious her emotions were still unsteady after regaining her memories. Leon had just saved her, yet she had attacked him so viciously, ungrateful, reckless. The flash of guilt unearthed long-buried memories and left her embarrassed and unsettled. Don't worry about it, Leon said, waving a hand as if brushing it off. It was an accident. Besides, you couldn't have hurt me. Natasha gripped her palms. She'd been pinned by the man in front of her earlier, completely unable to move. That kind of overwhelming strength, something that crushed every technique, wasn't something she would forget. She scanned the room with the edge of her vision, trying to steady herself. Thank you, she said again, glancing at Leon, then forcing a small shake of her head. Thank you for saving me, and thank you for not holding that against me. Leon was about to reply when she continued. Maybe it was nothing for you, but it means everything to me. She climbed down from the workbench and looked at him with a sincerity that made the air feel thinner. "You've given me a second life, Mr. Stark. It's not just you," she added, voice hardening into solemnity. "There are other widows. We will all owe you our lives." The Red Room's operatives were called widows. The best among them, the one to surpass all predecessors, earned the title Black Widow, named after the deadliest spider. The agent who held that title was equal parts lethal and cold. "A life saved can't easily be repaid," she said. "If you ever need help, ask for it," Natasha promised. "I'll do everything I can." She reached up and brushed the side of his face. Her breath was warm against his jaw. "But forgive me, I have to go." Conflict, reluctance, pain flickered over her features. "If I stay away from the Red Room too long, they'll come after me. I can't let them come after you because of me. And there are people who need me, others I have to save." As soon as consciousness returned, Natasha had already started plotting revenge against the Red Room. A resolute light flared in her eyes. She stood on tiptoe and kissed Leon on the cheek, soft and fleeting. "Thank you, Leon," she murmured, the voice like cotton, like a lover saying goodbye. She backed away slowly, eyes fixed on him. The image of a fairy tale princess roused by a prince, but forced to face a cruel stepmother alone. After 5 paces, she spun and left, a solitary, determined silhouette vanishing into the corridor. The departure underscored the part of her that would throw herself into danger for her comrades and for the man who had saved her. Leon touched his cheek where she'd kissed him, looking at his reflection in the lab glass as if stunned, like a naive kid who'd just stumbled into an impossible crush. "Wait, Natasha," he called. She paused, then turned her head just enough to show the profile of someone torn. "I'm sorry, Leon. I must go." "No, what I mean is, we're not that close. Calling me Mr. Stark is appropriate." Leon pinched the bridge of his nose and muttered under his breath, "Also, that rotten fish smell is really strong." Natasha froze as if struck. For a long, awkward beat, she stood statue still. Then she turned back slowly, hesitant. "Call me Mr. Stark?" It was clear she hadn't registered his aside about her odor. "Exactly." Leon leaned on the workbench. "Natasha Romanoff, born 1984, the Red Room's top Black Widow, dozens of cover identities, an expert at solo ops and psychological warfare. To be called by my first name and to get a goodbye kiss from a world-class agent like you, I am flattered. You put on quite the seduction routine." Leon smirked. "A little more, and I might have rushed in to say I'd follow you through dagger-strewn mountains and fire." Natasha's eyes flicked. She realized her gambit had been seen through. Her hesitancy melted into something calmer. "I didn't expect the most mediocre second son of the Stark family, according to the files, to be so well hidden. Are you CIA? Please, it's the internet age. You said your people use household AIs. Information's easy to collect. Also, most mediocre. I at least got into Columbia." Leon spread his hands. "Look, Natasha, I know about your past. And I'm not some spoiled rich kid clinging to fairy tales. So there's no need for the whole play hard to get routine. Although you didn't seem fully committed to it," he teased. "But can we cut to the chase? Ben, 2 coffees." He handed her one. "Drink something warm. When was the last time you consciously had coffee? Don't tell me it was 10 years ago." Natasha smiled without embarrassment and accepted the cup. "Thanks. The last time I had coffee like this was a year and a half ago." Leon arched an eyebrow. "So you were fully controlled by the Red Room more than a year ago? You seem to know a lot, young Master Leon." She moved closer, leaning on the bench beside him, deliberately soft and composed, another attempt to charm. "Don't extract information by seduction. Is that your method? If you have questions, ask them. It'll save a lot of poking around." Leon nodded toward the coffee. Natasha was undeniably striking. In her mid-20s, every gesture and expression carried natural magnetism. But Leon had just seen the bloodied organs and the red and white mess of her brain, and he'd smelled the sewer stench. Fantasies were not on his immediate agenda. "I didn't expect you, the brother of the country's most notorious playboy, to be a proper gentleman," Natasha said, dropping the flirtation. She was a master of reading people. This time she played to his obvious preference for efficiency. "That's not always accurate. Maybe another time I'll fall for it." Leon took 2 sips of coffee. "By the way, don't try that naive farewell act again. Only spoiled rich kids fall for that. Next time, stockings would be more effective. Good advice, I'll try that, she nodded. So, Mr. Stark, how do you know so much about me? Don't tell me it was the AI. Most of that stuff is classified paper, not on the internet. Leon crossed his arms. I can't say. It's classified. Natasha cocked her head. Is that what you meant when you said ask directly? Telling you to ask doesn't mean I have to answer. Leon's reply was deliberately evasive. He changed tack. Before you ask me anything, was that your attitude toward your savior just now? She flinched. He held up a finger. First, you attacked me when you woke up. Okay, that was an accident, and you did properly thank and apologize afterward. But right after remembering our earlier meeting, you tried to seduce me again. That was to get me to help you deal with the Red Room, right? The worst part, you watched my reaction through the glass reflection after you turned away. What? I save you and you're thanking me, then trying to drag me into a dangerous situation? The before and after is so different, I feel like a total fool. I apologize. Natasha threw up both hands. I'm sorry. I treated you like an ordinary wealthy kid and tried to use you. That was a mistake. It was my mistake to try to drag you in. I'm sorry. I just woke up and wanted an ally, someone who could give me security. Her face was suddenly softer, almost plaintive. You're strong and brilliant. With your help, I'd stand a better chance. But if you'd agreed to help just now, I would have told you everything, though you might not need it. And what I said earlier was true. If you ever need help, ask me. I'll do anything, provided I'm still alive. Leon stroked his chin, half snorting. Can I ask you to do unspeakable things too? Yes. Natasha's eyes hardened in a flash. After a heartbeat's hesitation, she answered with iron resolve. If it's you, I can accept it. Chapter 40. Reasons for the timeline change. Leon realized Natasha wasn't joking, and the smile left his face. All right, no need to be so serious. I was just teasing. I take back what I said earlier that wasn't respectful. He waved at Benben. Benben, bring this lady some more coffee. Natasha blinked in surprise. You're apologizing to me? Honestly, you're nothing like I expected. Apologizing? What are you talking about? I'm not apologizing. I'm just composing myself. At least I won't joke about things like that out loud, Leon said. Natasha's expression showed genuine confusion. You'd actually say that. You're very different. Not at all like a Stark. Maybe because I received a different kind of education in addition to the Stark one, Leon replied, lifting his cup to clink it against hers. But praise me all you want. It won't do you any good. You snuck in here, attacked me, and I saved you without holding a grudge. Then you revealed ill intentions. A verbal apology isn't enough. You're right. Natasha smiled thinly and sipped her coffee. But my compliment was sincere. That's the first time I've heard anything like that. It sounded cultured. Thanks. It's part of my self-image packaging, Leon shrugged. Apparently that packaging is very attractive to young women. Natasha's lips curved. Perhaps. So, shouldn't we be talking about you and this Red Room problem? Leon set his cup down. What do you want to know? Natasha straightened from the workbench. If this is the compensation you want, I'll tell you everything I know. I only have one question. How were you controlled by the Red Room a year and a half ago? That question had been bothering Leon for a long time. It affected how he judged the reality he was in, and he had everything to gain by pressing her. How I was controlled. Natasha repeated, staring at her cup. The past felt distant and raw. During the time she was under control, she had done too many violent things. Even struggling to act on her own seemed better in comparison. Being forced to retell it was like ripping a scab open. It would be easier, she thought, to walk into a hail of bullets. After a long moment, she began. I was trained and modified in the Red Room from a very young age. They brainwashed all the girls. But I fought the brainwashing and kept my will. When I found an opportunity, I tried to rebel. Her voice went thin and failed. Her eyes were empty as she stared at the coffee, looking through it into another time. They stopped relying only on brainwashing. To prevent another rebellion, they started using chemical agents to control us. So that's how it happened, she added tersely, as if detailing how one would fit an elephant into a refrigerator. Leon seized the key point. You're so capable. Why did your rebellion fail? In the original timeline, I should have met Hawkeye around 2006. then attacked the Red Room leader in Budapest, and successfully defected to Sealed. But things went completely differently here. Natasha's shoulders sagged. You can't imagine the Red Room's reach. Widows are everywhere. Individual power alone couldn't stop it. About 2 years ago, Hawkeye attacked me on behalf of S.Shield. That was my chance. I tried to connect with him and with S.Shield. Only. She looked up at Leon suddenly. It also had something to do with you. Me? In 2006, Stark Industries released a cross-era electronic product. The Red Room reverse-engineered that tech and used complementary technologies to upgrade their internal devices. She turned to him. So when I contacted Hawkeye, I was being monitored the whole time and didn't even know it. My communications tech only had basic anti-eavesdropping functions then, Leon said. Who could have imagined the Red Room's comm tech could leap forward so explosively in just a few months? Leon couldn't help but twitch a smile. Civilian tech in that world lagged far behind military tech. In 2006, Tony, taking one of his inspirations, applied military technologies to consumer devices and pushed civilian digital devices ahead by years in a matter of weeks. New products seemed to flood the market overnight. Smartphones, early holographic displays, advances that made the world feel like it jumped forward in a day. Leon remembered Obadiah grousing that Tony released too much at once. Modern tech is like that. When it explodes, he said, hiding his embarrassment with a sip of coffee. Natasha glared at him. If Stark Electronics had started 6 months later, I might have escaped or even destroyed the Red Room. You're probably right. Leon kept drinking. So it wasn't the world that was broken. It was his butterfly wings causing a tornado in Hungary. The butterfly effect could change a timeline. He had no idea why the change was so drastic and why nobody like the Time Variance Authority or the Ancient One had come knocking. For now, though, the world still fit the movies he knew. At least it wasn't the comic universe. That was a relief of sorts. What happened after that? He asked. Once my escape plan was uncovered, other widows swarmed me, and I was dragged back to the Red Room. I was imprisoned for half a year, and then they started chemically controlling me. I had no choice. For more than a year, I kept pieces of myself, but there were many consciousnesses. I couldn't be sure which part of me was really me. She turned her face away and wiped at it. In 10 months, I killed more people than I had in the previous 10 years. There were infants who couldn't even walk, pregnant women, important dignitaries. To this day, my hands are stained with blood, Natasha said, head bowed so Leon couldn't see her face. He felt the impulse to comfort her, but this was no use. Her inner reserve was iron. The stronger she was, the worse her conscience punished her. If Leon hadn't required this information as a form of payment, Natasha would never have told him. Even in the movie universe, she had kept the Red Room a secret from the teammates she considered family. It was a wound she had buried. So what do you plan to do? Leon motioned at Ben to refill her cup. Natasha accepted it with a small thank you and looked back at him. If possible, I want your help. It's not to drag you into another endless war, but could you help me make some inhibitors? Or give me the formula so I can try to save others. I will find a way to repay you. Leon stroked his chin. Inhibitors are simple, but you plan to rescue a group of widows, gather enough people, and then declare war on the Red Room? She finished for him. He admitted to himself he wouldn't mind seeing the Red Room get some trouble. With Tony having just revealed the Iron Man armor and the Red Room daring to send a Black Widow to infiltrate his home to kidnap him, the potential consequences if Tony went public were terrifying. If Tony announced he was Iron Man, the Red Room would react in ways no one could predict. Given their recklessness, Leon preferred to stop them before they could surface. Coincidentally, destroying the Red Room was also Natasha's goal, and he was willing to go along. I plan to do it, Natasha said, standing straighter. Mr. Stark, please believe me. I will definitely. Just call me Leon, he interrupted. You've shared so much. We should be considered friends. Natasha hesitated, then nodded. Leon. All right, listen, Leon said, tapping the table. Your plan is good, but it's not easy. First, you'll be cut off. Once you act, other widows will start disappearing one by one. The Red Room will react fast, and you'll be in a terrible position. Natasha shook her head slowly. I know, but I have to try. It's my responsibility. Responsibility, Leon repeated, thinking. Since you put it that way, I have an idea. A win-win, or rather, a three-way win.